Hello there, friendly neighbors, and welcome back to my channel. Alex and I just got home from a vacation deep in the Saskatchewan wilderness, hence me not uploading for the last 2 weeks, and we brought our ferrets with us. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity for me to make a video on traveling with ferrets, vacationing with ferrets, and everything that goes along with it. We all love our little ferret baby children, and because of that, oftentimes when we go on vacation, we want to be able to take our ferrets with us. I am definitely guilty of this. I have taken my ferrets on vacation quite a few times now. So today that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go through everything that you need to know about traveling with ferrets, as well as doing a little checklist of the important things for you to bring. I will have timestamps down below if you want to skip to a certain part in the video, though like I say always when I mention timestamps, I do recommend giving the video a full watch through first because I think I bring up some important information that you might need to know. So without further ado, let us begin this video, I guess. Yeah. Now's the part where I start going off my script and I don't ad-lib, so now I'll actually have a clear-cut understanding of what I say. Let's hop to it. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is the different modes of traveling. In my opinion, I think that traveling by car is really the only way to go when you're traveling with your ferrets. The way I see it, traveling by plane, train, or bus is just really, really stressful on your ferret, especially planes. I just really don't see a reason why you would want to take your ferret on a vacation if you're going somewhere so far that you need to take a plane. And of course, there are exceptions to this. I'm sure that there are times when you have to take your ferret on a plane with you, and if that is the case, just make sure that you've done your research just on the condition that your ferret is going to be kept in, making sure you're following any guidelines, and of course, if your ferret is even allowed to travel with you on a plane. If you are looking at it thinking, okay, this is going to be really stressful for my ferret, it's just really not worth it. Find someone to house it, find somewhere you can board them. At the end of the day, if you're just going to put your ferret through even more stress, just don't do it. In my opinion, there are two really important things to consider when you are taking your ferrets with you on vacation, and the most important one is, of course, legality. Are you legally allowed to take ferrets where you are going? Here in Canada, ferrets are legal nationwide, so I can take my ferrets anywhere that I want, but I know that in the US there are certain states where ferrets are illegal, and I know that in Europe there are also certain countries that ferrets are illegal. So make sure that you've just done your research, because the last thing you want is to be caught with a ferret somewhere that you aren't legally allowed to take them. Along with this, you're going to want to make sure you know any regulations for border crossing. Again, here in Canada, Canada is very large. We do not have to cross many borders if we're traveling with our ferrets, but if you're planning to go to a different country, for instance, you're going to have to cross a border. You might need to have certain paperwork together. Normally, this means your ferrets need to be up to date with their vaccines, which is a whole other can of worms. So just make sure you've really done your research on all of that beforehand. The second important thing to consider when traveling your ferret is the big question of, is this really worth it? Some of the big concerns that I have with taking ferrets is ferret proofing. The place that you're going to be taking your ferret to needs to be ferret proofed. So it's important to keep that in mind, that when you take them, you're probably going to have to take a little look around and fix things up, just like you would if you're bringing a ferret into your home. Second thing to think about is free roam time. Just like when you're at home, your ferrets are going to need a minimum of 6 to 8 hours outside of their cage every single day. So is that time that you're going to be able to dedicate to your ferret while you're on vacation? The next thing to consider is emergency situations. I really recommend, if you're taking your ferret with you on vacation, to make sure that you know exactly where the closest veterinary office is, so that if something were to happen, you know exactly where you can take them. It's just a necessary precaution, and if there aren't any vet offices around where you're going, I would really reconsider taking them with you, because the last thing you want is for an emergency situation to happen while you're on vacation and you not to be able to do anything about it. The next thing to consider is the journey. Because I personally think the only acceptable way to travel with ferrets is by car, this really applies more so to cars. If you're taking another mode of transportation, again, just make sure you've done your research on that. But as far as cars go, the big one with traveling with cars is temperature. Ferrets are very, very prone to heat stroke, so anything above 29 degrees Celsius, that's 85 Fahrenheit for you American folks, is going to be too warm for your ferrets. For this reason, if you don't have air conditioning in your car and you're traveling during summer, I really don't recommend taking your ferrets. And of course, how long are your ferrets going to be in the car with you? Alex and I drove for almost 9 hours to get to and from where we were going, and that was a really long, painful drive. It was not a fun time, I gotta say. So in my opinion, if it's gonna be anything over 12 hours, that's just too long. Your ferrets are gonna start cage raging, and it's just gonna be this whole stressful thing. So maybe don't bring them if it's too long of a car ride. And lastly, of course, you have to consider space. Ferrets ferrets are going to take up quite a bit of space. I'll go into detail more about this when we're talking about travel cages, but obviously if you have a big kennel or cage in your car, it's going to take up space for luggage and you might just simply not have room for them. So really just consider all of those things when you're debating whether or not to take them, because what it really comes down to is a vacation with your ferrets is not a vacation from ferret ownership. So if you've sat through all those things and you've decided, no, I still think it's worth it to take my ferrets, which you very well may have thought, I just did the exact same thing. Let's just go through a little checklist of all the things that you are going to want to make sure that you're bringing with your ferrets so that they can have a good, fun time on vacation as well. So one of the big things to consider is an on-location cage. In my opinion, playpens work really, really well for when you're taking your ferrets on vacation with you. And this is just because they're collapsible and super easy to store in your car, and they also do provide your ferret with quite a lot of space. I know I personally would not be a fan of bringing my multi-level cage with me on vacation, so this is a really easy solution to that. There are lots of different playpens that you can get out there. I believe Midwest has one that's specifically for small pets, but the one that I got was actually just for small dogs. So as you can see in the video I'm showing right now, I have a bunch of cardboard around it, and that's just because they can escape through the little spacing. But I got it at work and it was cheap, so I thought I may as well just get something that I'm gonna have just majorly reinforced and it'll look like a dumpster fire, because then I'm saving money, and you know, I'm kind of a cheap hoe. And of course, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's really important to remember free roam time. Though you have this playpen set up, your ferrets still are going to need their 6 to 8 hours outside of this cage. So what Alex and I did is when we weren't in the cabin that we were staying in, our ferrets would be in the playpen, and then we would come back every couple hours to let them run around for a bit and get their energy out. The next thing that you need to think about is your travel cage. Though you might have a playpen set up for when you're in your destination, you're still going to need something for your ferrets to be in while they're in the car. So there are quite a few different styles of cage that you can go with, and really you just want to make sure you have something that can fit a bed, a water dish, and if you can manage, I really recommend finding something that can fit a litter box. It just makes your traveling a lot easier. There's a bunch of different types of cages that you can get. I know that a lot of people just go with a kennel. I actually don't use a kennel when I travel. My favorite type of cage to use is the Living World Deluxe Habitat cage. Now this cage is actually catered towards rabbits, and as you can see in the video here, it's a pretty small little cage. What I really like about this cage as a travel cage is that it is big enough to fit a litter box. It also has a little hidey hole space underneath it if they want to just go sleep in the dark a little bit. And it's got this really awesome food dish connected to it. The way they have this set up, it makes it so that the food dish can't slip around, which is super convenient with ferrets who like to push dishes around, especially when you're traveling with them. Now this cage obviously is not big enough as a permanent cage. If you do have a cage like this for your ferrets permanently, I really recommend upgrading because this cage is just way too small for them, but it works super well as a temporary or travel cage. The next thing that you need to bring, obviously, is some toys, beds, and blankets. These are just things that are gonna, first off, smell like home and make them feel a little more comfortable, and also just give them a place to sleep. I brought a couple different types of tunnels and some pop-out beds that are super convenient to store and travel with, and my ferrets were super comfortable in those. If your ferret is harness trained, you probably want to consider bringing a harness or a leash, because then you can take them for a little walk and it'll also help burn off some of the energy. A very, very important thing to bring is ferret proofing supplies. So with me, I brought a roll of duct tape, some cardboard, and a pair of scissors. And this is because, like I mentioned earlier, you are very likely going to have to ferret proof the space that your ferrets are staying in. And these are all just like the super basic ferret proofing supplies that will normally help you get out of most situations. Personally, I like to bring my own cleaning supplies just because I feel bad if I'm staying at someone's house and I have to like constantly borrow their stuff. So I always make sure to bring a roll of toilet paper, garbage bags to clean litter up with, any sort of carpet cleaning supplies that you might have, or a cage cleaner. And then I also like to bring my own little sponge. I'm a raw feeder, so I have to clean out my ferrets' food dishes twice a day, and I'm not gonna ask someone if I can use their sponge for that because that's just really gross. So I just make sure I bring a new sponge, and at the end of the vacation I just throw it away. You also cannot forget the treats. Very important to bring your ferrets some treats because they're gonna need those. A big one is to make sure that you bring a first aid kit. Now I have a full-sized big first aid kit that I'm not gonna bring all of, so on vacation I just bring a mini first aid kit, and what I have in that is a little pair of scissors, some gauze, rubbing alcohol, an extra syringe for Nova's medicine, and then of course Nova's medicine, so if your ferret has medication, make sure that you bring their medicine. I feel like that's a pretty important one to remember. For me, I also bring my insulinoma crash protocol items, which I talk about in my insulinoma video, just because if Nova does have a blood sugar low, I want to make sure that I am ready to address that situation. Perhaps the most important thing to bring with your first aid kit is Vaseline. As many ferret owners know, Vaseline is really great for blockages, just in case your ferret ingests something that might get stuck. So making sure you have Vaseline on hand is so important. Vaseline can make a difference between your ferret having a potentially fatal blockage and your ferret just pooping a lot, so really make sure that you got some of that. And of course, you cannot forget to bring your ferrets food. If you feed kibble, this is easy, just bring the kibble, but if you feed them raw like me, you're going to want to invest in a cooler as well as some ice packs, and make sure that when you pack your ferrets, it is the very last thing that you pack up, because you want to make sure that that stays cold and frozen as long as you possibly can. Wow, look at this dummy. Look at this dummy dum-dum who completely forgot to mention the 10th thing, and also a really important thing that you think I wouldn't forget to mention. Anyway, also remember litter and litter boxes. That's fairly important with ferrets, so just make sure that you've got litter, possibly purchase an extra bag, because you don't want to run out. That would really suck if you ran out of litter on vacation. So now that you've got your little checklist and you have all your boxes checked, which honestly, I love a good checklist. What are you supposed to do once you're on the road with your ferrets? On the road with your ferrets, regardless of what size cage you have for them, I very much recommend stopping at least every 2 hours. This way, every 2 hours, you can make sure that they're getting some water, because obviously it's hard to keep water in a moving cage. It's just gonna slosh everywhere. And also, if you don't have enough room in your cage for litter boxes, this also gives you a chance to let your ferret go to the litter box. I also very strongly recommend getting a blanket or some thin sort of material that you can cover your ferret's cage with during travel. This just makes them a lot less stressed, and especially if it's sunny outside, this means that they're not going to have any direct sunlight going into their cage. Of course, one concern with covering their cage is them getting a little warm, so once again, make sure that you have the air conditioning going kind of on full blast. It might get a little chilly for you, but at least your ferrets are going to stay a comfortable temperature. And once you're on the road, of course, make sure that your ferrets are the very last thing that you pack into the car and the very first thing that you take out once you've gotten to your destination. So hopefully, despite all of the things that you're going to have to do in order to prepare for vacationing with your ferrets, you still manage to have a super fun, great time. Maybe this will be a good opportunity for them to do a little exploring, see the world a bit. For us, it was really great because our ferrets bonded quite a lot more when they were on vacation in a completely neutral territory. As many of you know, I did recently get 2 new ferrets, and so our groups are still just butting heads a little bit, so it was a nice little push in the right direction for them. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please make sure that you like, comment, and of course subscribe. I'm getting really close to 1,000 subscribers, and it's actually blowing my mind every time that I check my subscriber count. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I tweet about random stupid stuff, and I post pictures about random stupid stuff. I will see you guys next week for another video where I do something. I don't know what I'll do. It'll be something though. It'll probably be great. Hopefully. Goodbye!
What are you doing, babe? You drumming on her?
Boop, 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 boop.